Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites like manufacturing.net and Industrial Equipment News and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. But before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join us when we go live every Thursday. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
Good, man. How about you?
Doing great. Did you enjoy your time off last week?
Very much, yes. 3 days fishing in the boat, drinking beer.
Yeah?
Good.
Are you still in the boat? Like, still just chill? Or have you, like, ramped back up into, that corporate, fast-paced lifestyle that we all live here?
Interesting description. Actually, it was a little bit of a relief because I borrowed the boat. I was actually taking it back last night. So it's kind of like, felt good.
Oh, okay.
Just it's not sitting outside. I'm not responsible for somebody else's property at this point. So that was kind of a nice conclusion to that trip.
Now, I feel for you on this one because I'm equally not great at this. Any improvement on backing that boat into the water?
It is still very disorienting, to be honest. It was not pretty, but you know what? We got it done. Thankfully, I had somebody with me, a former colleague of ours, Bill, who was more than happy to man the boat, man the trailer. So that was very helpful.
No, that was, I always gave my brother grief about it. He had a clunker boat in his clunker truck when he was growing up as a teenager. But I mean, that's when you learn, when you've got, when you can't tell if there's a new scratch on the truck. Well,
it's just, you're not familiar to the movements. So you think you're screwing up and you're probably not, but then you overcorrect and then it's just like, let me just try to straighten out and try it again. And I don't know. Yeah. Somebody definitely could have had a good laugh at my expense trying to watch me back up the trailer. But
well, very good. Anna, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
Yes? That's good.
Not backed in a single boat this week, and I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah? I mean, what about the camper? You guys going camping anytime soon?
We winterized the camper, so not until spring.
Okay.
But yeah, I know when my husband backed that into the storage space, it was very expletive filled.
Yeah.
And it's a small camper too, but it's impossible to go.
The right way to say that, though, is you have never screwed up backing up a boat.
That's true. I've done it right every time I've done it.
That's right.
I've never screwed up backing up a boat or camper, but I've screwed up even as the person trying to tell the person what to do. Cut it. And I'm like, oh, wait, that means something else. Sorry, this way. You're the reason that Chris would have been swearing. Definitely. But I mean, I make him swear for other reasons too.
It's okay.
Good and bad.
Yeah, it's all right.
All right. Well, before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite. This week's episode is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. Knowledge is power, especially when navigating AI. Demystifying AI, a layperson's guide to artificial intelligence and its impact on our world, is a new business guide written by acclaimed author Glenn Hopper. The guide provides a comprehensive introduction to AI, shedding light on the core concepts and technologies that fuel it. Download it now. There is a link to download it in the body copy underneath the video as well as in the live chat. So go check it out and let us and Glenn know what you think of his work. All right, our first story this week. Milwaukee Tool opens Mississippi manufacturing facility. Brookfield, Wisconsin-based Milwaukee Tool last week opened a new manufacturing facility in Mississippi. The new location will be the company's 8th in Mississippi and employ more than 800 people. According to the company, the plant is its largest manufacturing facility in the U.S. Milwaukee Tool invested more than $60 million into the more than 500,000 square foot facility. The factory has state-of-the-art technology and manufacturing capabilities to make Milwaukee accessories like Sawzall blades. The company celebrated its 100th anniversary this year and has experienced double-digit growth every year for more than 10 years. Milwaukee has more than 10,000 employees just in the United States. In Mississippi, Milwaukee Tool has invested more than $250 million over the last 5 years and employs more than 4,000 people. Anna, looks like Milwaukee Tool is reaping the benefits of the company's ongoing investment in new technology.
Absolutely. First of all, I just want to know is the pronunciation of Milwaukee, is that how we say it here in Wisconsin, or does everyone say it that way?
Milwaukee?
Milwaukee.
Do you not hear the L? Milwaukee?
No, I don't hear it.
Milwaukee?
Milwaukee.
Oh, sorry, Milwaukee. Oh man, you're probably right.
You're not doing it.
Milwaukee.
But you don't know you're not doing it, and I say it the same way. I'm just saying, is that a Midwest
I feel like
thing?
I've always said Milwaukee. Made a point of saying
All right, Jeff. Well, you have a military haircut because you are very precise.
And I think it's just more my frenzied nature that I would just cut out the L altogether.
Yes.
Too much time spent on that L. Right. I always think of the...
You're just more organized as a person, I think, in general.
I mean...
I feel like this is meant as a criticism, but I'm not taking it that way.
It's not a criticism. It's a compliment.
Yeah,
take it as a compliment. Yeah.
So it's true I'm better than you.
Ooh, now we've gone too far.
Is that on file?
It's... at least we can edit this.
Yeah. Delete the footage.
I mean, does anyone else not think of Wayne's World too when you think of Milwaukee and Alice Cooper? I believe it's Milwaukee.
Yeah. Algonquin for the good land. Yes.
So tell us about what's happening for that tool manufacturer based in the what? Good land?
Yeah, in the good land, the southeastern corner of Wisconsin. So I think you're right. I think Milwaukee Tool, they've credited some of their product innovation on their ability to grow so rapidly in the power tool market, which they really have, as you mentioned. So they've done a lot with cordless technology over the years. That's been really successful for them. And I think perhaps more importantly, their battery technology, which they call red lithium. Milwaukee says this provides up to 40% more runtime, 20% more power, and 50% more recharges than any other lithium-ion products available. Now, that is according to Milwaukee Tool, not to me. However, the point can be made there that the company who spends a lot of money on R&D, they have a lot of technical centers. They really have been investing hard in this, in fact, for like the last 20 years almost. They're also focusing on things like user-centric designs and I think, maybe Jeff can speak more about this because you have a history in the tool business. But I do think that this is one of those industries, just in my perception, where people are willing to spend a little bit more money on a name that they trust. And so I think you can make a lot of headway in terms of market share with not just longevity, but also things like durability, ergonomics, things like where a person might say, I use it because it doesn't make my wrist hurt at the end of the day. Or a company might say, we buy these for our floor because the batteries last a full shift. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's a lot of competition in the power tool industry. A lot of money is being spent. And so I think, this is a little bit a cost of doing business is all these investments in R&D. But, they certainly have a head start with their long-standing investment strategy. Innovation has been core to their business for many years. So when you're up against a lot of formidable domestic competitors, which there are some, but then also kind of those lowest cost providers that you're getting from overseas, the tool market can be very tough to be in. And I think Milwaukee, I'm not trying to make this a commercial for Milwaukee Tool.
I just bought 2 of them.
but they do a really good job of development. They constantly have new products coming out. And I think, the market responds well to that and they're in a good position. I think that's why we're seeing all these new facilities and this double-digit growth, as you said.
Well, I think that's an important note on what they've invested on development because companies like Milwaukee Tool and Steel, Jeff, we've seen incredible growth there. But then I also think of other brands like a Craftsman where, people are willing to spend more on a brand they trust. But if you burn them, they're gone.
No, I think this is a very brand loyal segment. I think what's been interesting with Milwaukee as they've grown is they've been careful in terms of the way they've diversified. They've never gone away from sort of that core group of their customers, where a lot of power tool companies have tried to offer a more consumer line as well as a professional line. I think Milwaukee has stayed much truer to that level of quality and product that they've always produced. Mm-hmm. I think everybody knows the Sawzall. There's been a ton of knockoffs of it. But that's been the stake in how they've built on that with some of their other offerings has been pretty impressive to watch. And they've always, like I said, I think they've very stayed true to what they are, what they've always been. It's obviously proven very beneficial for them. The thing that caught my eye, I guess, in this This story was the fact that this was their 8th facility in Mississippi,
Yeah.
which is interesting for a Wisconsin-based company to build 8 plants in Mississippi. And I think we can all guess as to what has drawn them there. But just to kind of spell that out a little bit more, Mississippi is the second most cost-effective place in the U.S. to manufacture, behind only South Carolina. So not only in terms of labor rates or anything like that, but just what the government does in terms of fees and making it much more, I don't know, affordable, well, beyond affordable, but just easier, I guess, to build and expand in
Much
Mississippi.
more open for business.
You could say that. I mean, it's a right to work state. There are a very low number of union representative employees there, and when you look at it from a worker perspective, on average, they're about $11,000 per year less than every other manufacturing worker in the U.S. So there's a lot of benefits for Milwaukee. You can see why they have gone there, but it's also benefiting the state of Mississippi. In the last decade or so, they've increased their manufacturing GDP by like 50%. So it's working well for everybody. So when we look at expansion here, it wasn't like they closed something down and moved it there. This was a brand new facility that they were able to put in play.
Is that right? The average manufacturing worker makes $11,000 less in Mississippi?
According to NAM, the national average is about $84,000 a year. Mississippi comes in at $73,000.
Really? That is surprising. I wanted to note that this is a great development, but I mean, definitely still ramping up. They're currently at 40 employees at the plant. The plan is to have 800 by 2027, but kind of to both of your points, there's no reason to doubt that track record. Also just mentioning that the company is owned by Hong Kong-based Tektronic Industries. And, we've seen them kind of deal with counterfeit scandals, stuff like that this year. And I don't know, I just think that Milwaukee Tool is a feel-good story. And I think that's why anytime we talk about them on our websites, it does so well. Because, I mean, it's wild when that brand loyalty extends beyond just consumer purchases into general interest about the company's actions and what's kind of going on at it.
Definitely.
I don't know. I think it's really cool. All right. Our next most popular story this week, Home Depot to force corporate staff to work shifts in stores. In an effort to, quote, stay connected to the core of its business, Home Depot is requiring its corporate workforce to work shifts in retail stores. Bloomberg spotted a memo issued by Home Depot CEO Todd Decker that said, starting in Q4, corporate staff will be mandated to work an 8-hour shift each quarter. The mandate will allow white-collar employees to truly understand the challenges and opportunities our store associates face every day. The company has experienced a sales slump of late following heavy consumer investment in home renovations during the pandemic. Home Depot is one of the largest retailers in the United States with more than $150 billion in annual revenue and 450,000 employees. Now, this move applies to everyone, including senior management and remote workers. And Bloomberg called the effort, quote, unusual. But Anna, isn't this a tactic that nearly every company could benefit from?
Yeah, I mean, it is unusual. I will grant them that. I don't think that you're hearing a lot of companies mandate this type of scenario in their workforce, but I do think it's a decent idea. I had a feeling that our audience would take some interest in this story, and I think that's because it addresses, in a way, the class divide or maybe the conflict that exists in so many discussions around workforce, which is the pencil pushers versus the creators, if you will. And of course, that's an oversimplification of it. But I know that there are many workers out there, the ones who are doing the heavy lifting, both figuratively and literally, who sort of bemoan the fact that the ones creating the processes and the SOPs are not the ones who actively apply them, whether that's on a plant floor or in a retail store like Home Depot. So I think it's a great idea. If retail is your business, then everyone who works for you should understand how your stores operate. I think same with manufacturing. That's, that makes sense to me. I think if there was a chief complaint from the commenters on this story, and I also, I brought this up with my husband as well, and we had a conversation about this yesterday. He kind of said the same thing. Is 1 8-hour shift per quarter enough to fully capture that operating environment and perhaps more importantly, the culture of those stores? His point was, you're going to get a lot of people just following somebody around. They're not really like, and
it's going to be shadowing.
It's going to be shadowing. I think the other thing that you need to consider with the grind and the grunt of retail is also the repetition, and that you cannot adequately capture with this program. However, I don't know how you remedy that besides like really like, I mean, they have jobs, right? I mean, there's no way to put them day in and day out in these stores and everybody still be effective. That's not realistic. So maybe this is a good place to start and see what kind of benefits they can yield. I think key is finding a way to, we talk about people being inundated with data and overloaded with data, and how do you make that actionable? In this case too, I think you need to look at how are we quantifying what we're taking away from this experience and actually applying it to our processes.
No, I agree. I do think that something would be more effective. Some of the readers were saying 8 hours a week or a week each quarter. I think maybe a week each quarter or twice a year would be more realistic. I do think from my personal experience, that would also help with morale, seeing those people on the floor and not just sort of doing lip service. I don't know. I think it's a really cool concept. And it makes me think of, we worked on the story with DigiKey a few months ago, and that's one of their core tenets, that everyone needs to be cross-trained in at least another department. And I mean, some of that is because they're in northern Minnesota and, the elements sometimes make it impossible to get there. But I also think that it gives, I'm talking to somebody from the marketing department, and because he's worked on the floor, he has an entirely different perspective of the business. And I think that is truly very important. Jeff, this also reminds me of, we have discussed my many jobs in the past. I've had a handful.
You've had every job.
I've had like 7 handfuls, maybe more. But so a tale of 2 different ones. When I worked at Sears versus when I worked at Pick and Save. When I worked at Pick and Save, it was at the time a locally owned grocery store. And while I still had my problem with authoritative figures, they all worked in specific departments, and you saw them on the floor every day, right? So you saw their buy-in. Whereas when I worked for Sears, never saw upper management, didn't know who they were other than the name on the memo that made you change what you were doing. And I'll say, just from personal experience, it gives you so much more buy-in when you see the people making the rules kind of going through what you go through on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I mean, definitely want to weigh in on that. First, I need to sharpshoot myself because I got my numbers a little mixed up on the last one. 84,000 is the average Wisconsin manufacturing employee versus 73 in Mississippi. National average is actually much higher than 84,000.
What is it?
According to NAM, and this is a little, the scale gets a little off because California actually has the most manufacturing workers. Things are a little different, but it's over $100,000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
On average.
Yeah.
So, it depends a little bit on levels and all that kind of stuff, but using round numbers.
Okay. Okay.
But I think when it comes back to this story, it reminds me of a couple of things, and I brought these up before on the podcast. I remember being, in the Army, being summoned across the rifle range, reporting to the drill sergeant, and him basically saying, "Hey, Private, excellent initiative, poor execution because I didn't bring everything with me that I should have." And I think that could be applied here as well. It's a great idea. But as you guys have alluded to, if it's not carried out in the right way, if those white-collar workers who are spending this 8 hours on the store floor aren't taking advantage of it, and they're basically just checking their phone and walking around and going through the motions, this will mean nothing.
That actually, depending on what department they're in, that might be the most realistic use of their time on the floor. Just like, what'd you do? Oh, I kind of just played on my phone for 8 hours and didn't help anybody. So you got the real experience. No.
Which I think, if that's the case, if that's what Home Depot is doing, it probably explains some of their bigger issues here, which I think is probably at the core of what they're trying to solve. They have a sales problem right now. They have a big time sales problem. Their sales down, comparable sales, I think year over year, I saw something around a 3 to 4%, which on a retail level is a huge number, especially when you're looking at a lot of building material costs and other things increasing so much. Plus, they've got a lot more competition right now. Whether it's on the consumer level, which you can buy so much stuff at Amazon or online or whatever the case may be, or when you're looking at the contractor level, when prices are so high, it becomes that much more scrutinized. They've got options, whether it's Lowe's, whether it's Menards, whether it's going to ABC or some other distributor. There's a lot of different places they can go. So I think if Home Depot is trying to really get after it and understand what's going on in terms of where this sales discrepancy is coming from, this is a great way to do it, but they have to have buy-in from everyone involved, and that's what remains to be seen. What it also reminded me of is in another life when we would have salespeople here go on reader calls.
Oh, yeah.
So basically this was, for the magazine I was working on dealt with automotive tools and equipment. I would spend a day following around the guy on the Snap-on or Mac or Matco tools truck. And it was great because you learn about their business, but also the automotive technicians who are using all the tools. And there's just a ton of ingrained marketing knowledge or market understanding that would come from these days on the road. And once in a while, a salesperson would come with. Well, if the salesperson got into it and talked to everybody and took a look at what was going on, there's a ton that they could bring back and share with their advertisers saying, you know what? I didn't see your products on this truck. Mm-hmm. They were not talking about it. And when they did talk about power tools, they were talking about hand tools, these are the features and benefits that they were bringing up. That was a lot of benefit that they could draw from that experience. But there was just as many salespeople who would basically go, they were checking voicemails, they were not paying attention, kicking rocks in the parking lot, whatever the case may be, and totally missed out on that. Same thing is going to apply here.
I agree that the idea of being able to visit a customer, even if it's just once, if you buy into it, that information is invaluable. Yeah. Way better than anything you're going to get from a survey or any other sort of market research. And Anna, I mean, that's kind of a lost art at the time, you know?
Yeah, I suppose.
I feel like because everything is so analytics driven, we think that we have a dashboard to understand everybody and everything they do. And sometimes we don't just talk to them. To get to know them a little bit more. I wanted to call out a perspective from one particular reader. So he was a retired guy who has been in the distribution business, who had been in the distribution business for nearly 50 years. He would only hire people who agreed to go through a 6-month training process.
Wow.
He says, quote, the ones who stuck with it became the best managers because they knew where every nut and bolt was. And I thought that was incredible. That was, and maybe that's a little too old school, but I thought, if you could get that kind of buy-in from, it kind of shows the employees, the prospective employees buy-in, as well as the companies willing to invest 6 months of training, to bring you up to speed. When he was hired or when he was interviewing to become the VP or vice president of an auto parts business, part of what he agreed to was he insisted on a 6-month training period during which he would work in every department. And that was contingent on him taking this VP role. I just thought that was really cool and showed somebody that, wanted to fully understand the business. So that way he could kind of get the most out of it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was at least very unique. Also, Doug's joining us live and Doug says hi. So everyone, hi, Doug.
Hi, Doug.
All right. Our next most popular story. Toyota pumps the brakes on EV production in the United States. Toyota originally wanted to start building 3-row electric SUVs in the U.S. at its plant in Kentucky next year. After all, the company just invested some $1.3 billion in it, so hey, why not use it? But now, according to Nikkei, it looks like the work won't start until 2026. Likely due to slowing U.S. demand. Toyota confirmed the delay to Reuters. Quote, we've always said it would be late 2025 and it could creep into 2026, and it doesn't look like it's going to creep into 2026. Toyota still plans to roll out 5 to 7 new EV models in the U.S. over the next 2 years. The company has also canceled plans to start building an electric Lexus in the United States by 2030. Instead, it's going to build them overseas, ship them over. The changes of plan have impacted the automaker's production goals. The company previously wanted to make 1.5 million EVs globally by 2026. That number looks like it's going to come in a little bit closer to 1 million. Anna, it looks like we're still coming down from that EV frenzy that we saw at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I took issue with a few points that were made in this story only because I think there's some danger in oversimplifying these types of scenarios by suggesting that the EV slowdown, which has turned into like the biggest auto scapegoat, is at the root when in fact I think the auto industry has many other problems.
Yeah.
And secondly, Toyota didn't say that was why they were
right.
scaling back.
Yeah.
they said something else was happening. So,
well, they said, that was my biggest point. They said, we always said that. We always said it could be late 2025, possibly 2026, and it still doesn't look like 2026.
Yeah.
So it was just people being like, well, you know what this probably is?
Yeah.
That's probably an EV slump.
Yeah. And for Toyota, like they pump the brakes, but they're going to like step off the brakes for after that. Like, it's not like they're like stopping. It just, I don't know. It felt a little bit oversimplified. So, Reuters mentioned in their report that supply disruption and governance issues had prompted Toyota to delay the start of this U.S. EV production by 6 months. That's what a source told them. Mm-hmm. Who knows? I'm sure it's a bevy of issues involved here, but Reuters says Toyota was forced to repeatedly halt production at a Mexico plant earlier this year after local labor shortages snarled output at suppliers, according to people with knowledge of the automaker's operations. The stoppages, details of which were corroborated by documents from Toyota and suppliers reviewed by Reuters, illustrate a potential choke point for the world's top automaker, which plans to produce 10 million vehicles this year. So I don't think it's just about EVs. I think it's about their supply chain too being kind of unwieldy right now. Labor shortages, a key point in that, and that's globally, because that's taking place in Mexico as well. I would like to also add some context, by the way, on this EV slump that we talk about. You hear about it in the media constantly. I read a report in Inside EVs that took issue with the topic of this EV slump. Mm-hmm. And as usual, I think it's a little bit more complicated. They cited some data from Cox Automotive that by the close of the second quarter, total U.S. EV sales were up 7.3% more than the overall auto market. They said Tesla is dragging the industry average down with, their aging vehicles. We know Tesla's got some problems with its CEO, kind of alienating some people.
Mm-hmm.
Who's that?
A touch.
I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah, less jumping, more working.
So it said in the report, excluding Tesla, EV sales were up 33% year over year in the first half of 2024. That's pretty recent data. And so I think if you look at 33% or even that 7% number and call that a stall, and what they said too, anyone who calls that a stall is either ignorant of how large businesses grow or purposely misleading you. I'm not like looking for a conspiracy theory here at all. But I do think that, you look at Toyota, their EV sales were up 67% the last time they reported. So I think Toyota confirming that they actually haven't changed plans to put out 5 to 7 new EVs in the next 2 years speaks to that. I don't think they're walking away by any means right now. So to apply this, what again felt like an oversimplification of what's happening here and suggest that Toyota doesn't want to produce EVs. That's not what Toyota is saying. Yeah. So I don't know. Just my perspective on this, I guess, that we got to look at everything that's involved here.
Well, and I feel like these are all things we expected and kind of called. Because remember, at the beginning of this year into last year, we were all kind of skeptical as to how everyone was just like, oh, right, we're all in EVs and this is the way forward and this is all we're going to do. Mm-hmm. And we were all kind of just like, okay, well, I mean, good, but like, are we just going to flip the switch and that's the new market reality? And I think that we're seeing the realization of, it's going to be more of a transition. It's not going to be just, unless we have some sort of catastrophic event that means we need to flip the switch on EVs overnight. I just think it is going to be more, of a slow burn.
Well, and I just don't think that we can apply, like every time an automaker has a snarl in their labor force or supply chain or a global issue, that's not indicative of their EV transition problem. It's an indicative of an auto industry problem that happens to ICE vehicles as well. And, they get delayed on their vehicle development all the time. So I don't know. To me, it felt like maybe a little bit heavy-handed to say that Toyota was like, for some reason, not doing what they said that they were going to do, because it sounds like they still are. So
yeah, agreed. Jeff, I didn't see the big deal with a lot of the story, but I mean, what's one thing that you've kind of said over and over again? Making cars is hard.
Especially when it's a different type of car.
Yeah.
It takes different materials and all that kind of stuff. It feels like whenever we have, as you guys have alluded to, these types of stories, we want to take it back to EVs, and you're sort of there's a polarizing perspective on either somebody wanting to panic about we've just gone too far with EVs and we're counting on them too much and now people don't want them and this whole thing is trash, or people sort of being more apologetic on the EV side and pointing out all of the different reasons why people, it's not that they don't want them, it's that there's all these other issues.
Yeah.
The reality is it's somewhere in the middle. Okay. This is it's becoming a mature product. So for a mature product to show somewhat flatter sales after 100, 200, 300% growth year over year, that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like that's just part of the deal. The issue was a lot of the projections that were made that were looking at these just huge jumps continuing to take place for the next 5 to 10 years. Those haven't happened.
Yeah.
That's what it has. I mean, that's just the consumer saying, I'm going to pump the brakes on this, pardon the pun, before I jump into the EV thing. And I think part of that is because the vehicle makers are so focused on the new vehicles and the features and the benefits, they're forgetting one of the core elements of an electric vehicle, which is to be able to power it. Because right now, one of the biggest concerns that we've talked about is the range anxiety. Or where am I going to plug in? It's not as easy to find some place to plug in as it is to get gas. And that hasn't been addressed, in my opinion, on the level that it should by the automakers. When you look at, and a lot of this is education, a lot of this is also investment that needs to take place. Now, they've all gotten together in terms of the connector, so you don't need a separate type of plug-in, depending on your vehicle make, which is a positive thing. But when you look at California, Florida, Texas, and I think Washington are the four largest, the 4 states with the most EV sales and registrations. Those 4, and if you throw in like New York, New Jersey, those 6, that's like 75% of all registered EVs. Now, it's no coincidence that those states also have the most charging stations. Like I think it's 2 and 3, phase 2, phase 3, whatever you want to say. They have the most of them. So a lot of that range anxiety, it feels like, has maybe been addressed, or at least it's been trying to be addressed. There's not as much of it. So when you're looking at Wisconsin or Wyoming or any of these other places where there's not as high of an EV sales level, that's what you need to do. I think that's what the automakers need to step in to reinforce their confidence in this technology and in these vehicles by saying, look, we know you have this range anxiety. We're addressing that too. Look at the vehicles here. And I've got no stake in this. If you want to buy an EV, an ICE engine, whatever works for you. But if we're going to move forward here, we need to have the infrastructure in place. When I talk about the education part of that, and I'm drawing from a couple of different places here. If you want the exact sources, email me and I'll let you know. But one of the ways that we can get past this is right now, on average, for every gas-powered car, there are 197 pumps available, okay, on the road. When you look at electric vehicles, even in the worst case scenario, when I was breaking it down by state, it's maybe down to about there's one outlet or one charging station for every 75 electric vehicles. So the ratio is much better actually for electric vehicles than gas-powered cars. The problem is for every 1,000 miles of road, there's 104 gas pumps. There's only 22 electric vehicle charging stations. Yeah. This is the thing we need to address. This isn't a lack of confidence in the technology. This isn't the vehicle makers having to scale back as much as it is about instilling that confidence that people can power their vehicles.
Well, but I still think that's a transition. That's not something you turn on overnight. Like the biggest gas station titan in Wisconsin, Quick Trip, just announced that they're going to start installing more charging stations at their entire network of Quick Trips. And I think that's something where you hear biggest gas station in the States and charging, and that immediately gives you more peace of mind.
Okay, and I'll just bring this up again. What we just need it just needs to happen quicker. Eagle River, where I was last weekend, probably about 200 gas pumps. There were literally 4 places you could plug in an electric vehicle. One outlet.
I'm honestly surprised that was 4.
One outlet, not like a gas, like a gas station where you got multiples.
I think part of the problem is the infrastructure cost calculation is completely different because there's no gas vehicles that can be charged or like filled up at your house, right? But the vast majority of people who own EVs have personal chargers at their homes. And so the demand question is very strange. It's like, are you making chargers available for people to like occasionally charge on a road trip? And then are you getting your money back? So it's just like, how do you figure out what the need is? You can't figure that out just based on raw sales numbers. And so I think that's part of it too, is like making those viable from a cost standpoint. So it is a challenge. It's not just an issue of it's slow. I agree with you that the rollout needs to be better, but it's a little bit more complex, I think, when you look at it that way.
But to that point, so you've had your EV for what, 6 months now?
Mm-hmm.
And you've used a charger outside your home like once?
Never.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I remember you describing that to me, and it kind of really puts a different perspective on things, because you're right. You have the same thought where I don't want to get stranded and need to plug in my car somewhere. But I don't know, when you kind of shared that information, it was like, it just it put it under a different lens.
Yeah. I mean, I have no range anxiety because but again, like if I wanted to take a road trip or something, I would have to like map it out and figure that out.
Yeah.
To Jeff's point, the infrastructure in our state is pretty terrible. There's like, you really have to figure out in advance where you're going to stop. And there are places where it's really just kind of a desert. So it is not perfect. And I know it's not a reality for everyone to home charge. So
is it going to be more comparable to Airbnb, where you find out that you can charge at, John's house? Just, hey, I'm headed up towards Eagle River.
Yeah.
Can I borrow your charger for a few hours?
Interesting. That's probably an idea that, I mean, like if there's no regulation.
Fast charging.
Yeah. I was kind of interested in, so what does this EV only future look like? Or at least what does a transition look like? And today, Akio Toyoda, who's the chairman of Toyota Motor Corporation, said that the shift to an EV-only future is going to lead to significant job losses. And I was kind of curious. I was like, all right, he's being a bit provocative, even though he's at the unveiling of a statue of his father. So everyone calm down. It's supposed to be a happy day. But he was talking about how it's not just the people who are working on engine-related technologies, but at the many suppliers in the sector. He said, quote, there are 5.5 million people involved in the automotive industry in Japan. If electric vehicles simply become the only choice, including for our suppliers, those people's jobs would be lost. And that's, we just flip the switch. He also said, personally, I like driving gas cars. It's just like, all right, I get it. But, you have to put a little bit of context into this as to where, Toyota is championing a more multi-pathway strategy that doesn't just include EVs, but also hybrids, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, and other powertrain technology. But I thought this was it offered a good example or perspective of how it needs to be that transition, not just an overnight change. I don't know.
Yeah.
Plus, you got to do it, Jeff, because he likes driving gas-powered cars. Got to keep them.
Well, nobody dislikes driving one.
No.
It's not the issue.
No. All right. Well, our next most popular story this week, toilet paper panic returns amid dock workers strike. When dock workers at East and Gulf Coast ports began to strike on October 1st, some reports suggested that the labor unrest could cause price increases and shortages. And when people hear the word shortages, they buy toilet paper. A lot of it. All of it gone. According to multiple news outlets, shoppers surged upon stores in a frenzy to buy TP. What's funny is that the panic buying was more likely to cause the supply chain problems than the strike. Because, according to the Center for Land Use Interpretation, 90% of toilet paper consumed in the U.S. is produced domestically. The other 10% comes from Mexico and Canada. 80% of toilet paper production comes from Kimberly-Clark, Georgia-Pacific, and Procter & Gamble, American companies. Some of the items that actually might get hit by this strike are bananas, chocolate, specialty meats, and alcohol. My God, an alcohol shortage around the holidays. Now, most of this is moot as the 45,000 dock workers went back to work last Friday, reaching a deal that's going to suspend the strike until January 15th. Hopefully, that's enough time to negotiate a new contract. Anna, one positive thing that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic is that retailers had to adapt, to make sure that products were available during disruptions.
I don't know that we learned anything from the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, an expert said this, so
Okay.
at least one person believes it.
This was one of those stories that I think sometimes becomes a bit of a runaway train. While the original reports were anecdotal, I think the ensuing coverage almost creates a permission structure for people to do the same when they read this. Like, oh, no, we need to stock up on toilet paper. I didn't think of that. Other people are doing it. We should probably do it. What's the harm in grabbing an extra pack? Like, it feeds the problem, just talking about it. And to be honest, there were a few other things going on at the time. I wouldn't eliminate from the possibility here that maybe Hurricane Helene was a factor. I mean, it was approaching right around the same time as this strike. People also tend to stock up when there is a natural disaster on the way. Very common. Certainly might explain some empty shelves in many areas, because that was like a huge swath of geography that hit. So I think it's also important to add here too that the American Forest and Paper Association actually denied that there was any widespread shortage of toilet paper to begin with. So again, it was anecdotal. It became a thing, and I think we saw that a lot during the pandemic too. Just like almost like these are very popular stories. So let's jump on this idea that everyone's buying up all the peanuts or whatever.
I think so too. I think people read something like this or see a report like this and they're like, just ridiculous. And to your point, say, we'll just get an extra one just in case.
Yeah, because if everyone's buying it, then I need to buy it too. Otherwise, I'm going to run out.
That's right.
I don't know. If all that said, if this truly took place in isolated places among isolated individuals, please remember that when this happened during the pandemic, it was entirely unnecessary. And the hoarding behavior itself was what caused the shortages, as you alluded to in your lead up to this. And to me, it's embarrassing to think that it would cause people to make that same mistake again, not to mention considering this is a domestic supply and would not even have been impacted by this port strike. Again, if this really happened in a widespread way, due to the strike, which I'd wager to guess is a very big if. I think probably somebody saw something and I don't know. Sometimes we try to extrapolate things a little bit too much. Like this is a broad issue when it's a this guy issue. I don't know.
Well, the one good thing we learned from the pandemic is that retailers knew that consumers weren't going to change their habits, so they could plan accordingly, and other suppliers in the industry. That's at least one good thing.
Maybe. I don't know. It's very expensive for manufacturers to hold on to more inventory than they need because of this. That's why they don't do it. And so, we talked a lot about, was there going to be a demise of just in time based on what happened during the pandemic? And I think everyone wants to approach the market with like this just in case stockpile, but at the same time, that is a lot of carrying cost. So I think maybe less of that actually is taking place in reality than we might think.
You think that'll come down a little bit? Because I'd say that's pretty common still, is the just in case inventory.
I think it's a great, really nice thing to do. But if you're trying to cut costs that's one great way to do it.
Situational, I think.
Yeah. Well, if you're a toilet paper manufacturer, fill those shelves, fill those warehouses. Jeff, one thing for me is that at least these types of situations really make for high entertainment in an otherwise cesspool of social media.
Wow. That is
because
quite a collection of words you just said there.
Well, thank you. I like to collect words. I know. Sometimes I just mix them all up in the bag and throw them out and see what comes out.
Scrabble it, huh?
Yeah, we have a couple of friends on the East Coast in New Jersey, and listening to some of them vent on some of these hoarding practices, at least for me, really funny.
First of all, we have something called the Center for Land Use Interpretation.
What?
Why interpretation?
Yeah.
What?
They read the leaves, man.
What does that mean? What does it mean?
Right, yeah. That was pretty good. What is that? I'm just asking generally. I'm not asking you for an answer, but like land use interpretation. What a horrible name for a government agency.
How do you even interpret that?
The cluey No,
Oh my gosh.
it's real.
I believe that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So reading this story, aside from trying to figure out what the Center for Land Use Interpretation does, there were two quotes that came to mind. The first one was from Harold Daggett. He's the president and chief negotiator for the International Longshoremen Association. So he's the union head, the Sean Fain of these folks, if you will. And when you put out a quote like this, I think it sort of inspires some of the behavior that we saw. And that was, "I will cripple you and you have no idea what that means." Nobody does, said Daggett. These people today don't know what a strike is. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. And he continues, "First week, it'll be all over the news. Boom, boom, boom. Second week, guys who sell cars can't sell cars. They get laid off. Third week, malls start closing down because they can't get goods from China and they can't sell clothes. Everything in the United States comes on a ship. They will go out of business. Construction workers get laid off because the materials aren't coming in. They lose their jobs. Everybody is hitting the longshoremen now because now they realize how important our jobs are."
Whoa.
So when you put that soundbite out into the universe, and it's coupled with something that I remember from Tommy Lee Jones saying in Men in Black, "A person is smart. People are dumb, panicky, dangerous animals, and you know it." So that two things is what I was thinking of. Basically, this guy created a lot of panic potentially with basically saying he's going to cripple every single economy with his longshoremen going on strike. And again, a person looks at that and goes, this guy is exaggerating to make a point for the people he represents. People collectively get together and go, oh crap, let's stock up on everything.
Mm-hmm. It just proves that you need to read the entire quote, because if they would have read or listened to the entire quote where he talked about malls potentially going out of business, they would have realized this is an old, out of touch man.
There's a lot of, I could go off on a definite tangent on Mr. Daggett here, but I will resist the urge. Seeing as how they did and collect, you have to give them some credit for coming together. I think a lot of it was because of what was coming together with the hurricane and realizing what impact that could have just on our society and figuring out a solution. So do give them some credit there.
I agree. Like, it did seem like with all the bluster and the groundswell that was happening, it looked like it could be bad. And you're right. Credit is due that cooler heads were able to at least kick the can. Right. Just like, let's give it a little more time. You know what? Let's just calm down. Jeff, the Center for Land Use Interpretation is a research and education organization interested in understanding the nature and extent of human interaction with the surface of the earth.
Then call it the Center for Land Use. Land use, like
the Center for Land Use,
the land use knowledge, land use, some research, not
you
interpretation. That sounds terrible.
I think you get it all from this photo here.
It's powerful.
Yep, it is a powerful.
The irony of your issue you take with interpreting the word interpretation, Jeff, just makes my brain explode.
You're welcome.
I'll be thinking about that one for a while.
So I just wanted to throw out a friendly reminder that, we survived the better part of 1,856 years without toilet paper until Joseph Gady invented modern toilet paper, or, quote, medicated paper, which is actually made from hemp, and also watermarked with his name on it. He's like, I'm going to make a paper for the masses and they will all see my name when they use it. So he made this in 1857. Splinter-free, quote-unquote, toilet paper wasn't available until 1935, and that's when it was invented by Northern Tissue Company. Splinter-free! Ha! That is a term.
That shouldn't need to be spelled out.
No, you feel that in your bones, man.
And other places.
And many, many other places. So I linked this. I linked to this. If producer Eric or Alex can pull it up. It was an ad for this medicated paper, and it shows. The ad says, "The greatest necessity of the age: Gaiety's medicated paper for the water closet." Now, first of all, this ad is just a beautiful thing, and I highly recommend that you check this out and read it. But the biggest issue was that people were just using regular paper, and on this regular paper was this black ink. And It turns out it was very, very toxic. That if the ad asks, how can we apply that ink to the tenderest part of the body corporate if we accept the eye? And this ad is just full of beautiful gems like that. Also, apparently they had an issue with eating and drinking ink back in the day that poisoned people. Don't do that. Wow. But I wound up down a fascinating hole, a fascinating tangent on Gaiety's medicated paper. And I highly recommend it if you ever have some time to fill.
The paper or the story?
Wait, to check out the paper or the story?
Yeah.
I mean, both. You have to see what this medicated paper looks like. It's just, it would be great if you needed a prescription, you know. Can I get some medicated paper? But so, you know, we had it. We didn't have it for a long time and we'd be okay without it. You know, the seashells. Okay, our next most popular story. Bankrupt EV maker leaves abandoned headquarters in shambles. In June, Fisker Automotive filed for bankruptcy protection. Shortly thereafter, the company filed a legal motion to get out of the lease of its former headquarters in California. According to TechCrunch, the arrangements could be in jeopardy now following a new filing in which Fisker's landlord, Shamrock, describes the state of the company's abandoned headquarters as, quote, complete disarray. Shamrock repossessed the premises, quote, due to past acts of vandalism, theft, and damage related to the homeless breaking into and attempting to set up residence. When Shamrock's representative, Tony Lenzini, inspected the property, he found a scene that led him to believe the building had been ransacked. Personal property and office supplies scattered about the property. Potential hazardous chemicals left behind. 20 batteries still on site. Even the full-scale clay models used to prototype new vehicle models were still there. Shamrock says it's facing tens of thousands of dollars in cleanup costs, damage repairs, and possibly hazardous waste removal. The company is also getting calls from people, likely former employees, who are hoping to recover personal property. Anna, sure, this was a mess, but to call it a chaotic scene seems like a reach for someone that is maybe trying to paint a picture of the likely land a larger settlement.
Oh, maybe.
Just maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Fisker is such a weird and interesting story, and it's probably great, like good for them that they're done. And
for now.
That they're ransacked and done. I don't know.
Fisker's on to what? Life number 3 to number 4? They got like 5 more left.
Yeah, maybe. Just change it to an LLC next time. I'm not sure what else to do. But I thought it was interesting because, you know, if you look at Fisker's history, you know, I don't think that they've like fled the industry due to, again, like issues with the EV market and its health or lack of health or however you see it. Fisker had a lot of problems. It was overvalued when it was listed because that always happens, which means it's like a race against time to make money because it's a startup. So, you know, they're starting there. It had one vehicle, the Ocean, which endured a bunch of technical problems. It was recalled a few times, I think 5 times. There was investigations underway about it losing power. There was just a lot going on there that was not good. So their stock started to plummet. They're cutting prices. Other EV companies are plentiful and everywhere. There are just so many things stacked against Fisker at that point. And as I've mentioned in the past, not least of which were the issue of not having a dealer network or a repair network. So why take the risk of buying that vehicle, which was a very nice looking EV, but you know, there's so many other options out there. And if the technology is brand new to most buyers, then not knowing where you'll service it or if this struggling company is going to be around, I think that's a quick trip down the drain once you start that circle, right? Mm-hmm. So there was some talk at one point amidst this company's downfall that they needed to bounce from their headquarters like ASAP. They were getting kicked out. It was also suggested they were planning to sell some assets to pay their creditors And so it is confusing to me why they left things behind if that was the case. We know that they had multiple prototypes in development. They had a vehicle called the Pear that they were planning to sell overseas. I know they sunk a lot into that. So why there wasn't more done to protect what might get left behind there in terms of like protecting their intellectual property. It's weird that they left those clay models there to me. That was like one of the weirdest things. Yeah. It just sort of reeked of desperation, just like some of the other moves that Fisker has made. So it was sort of a little bit true to form. Like, well, this company just seems like a total rat's nest at this point. Like, of course, they just walked away. I don't know. Yeah. It was reported that in its bankruptcy dealings, the company proposed that its customers be on the hook for the labor costs associated with 5 recalls that were on the ocean. Until they were told that is in fact illegal. That's the kind of desperate space that Fisker is in right now. To even propose that, which is like completely outrageous to any normal person observing the situation or any business or automaker observing the situation, that's where they're at right now. So I guess you just walk away and close the door, and if stuff gets ransacked, it gets ransacked.
Well, it's hard to hold a company accountable, especially when they're trying desperately to survive. And to me, this office didn't just look like any office after things go bad. It also looks like some offices after things go good and they need to move. It looks like this is a facility where they walk in one day.
That is a super glass half full perspective, David.
Well, no, but I'm just saying in terms of one of my takeaways from this is when he said they left it in shambles, I was like, oh, I can't wait to look at the photos in the lawsuit. And I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know. It looks like they just moved out. And Jeff,
in defense,
okay,
if someone took a picture of your desk,
no,
for you, it is highly organized.
Yeah,
you know where everything is. I would probably I would feel uncomfortable trying to work on your desktop, the number of windows you have open. It would give me anxiety.
If we could do,
so to me, that is shambles.
We need to do some man on the street stuff where we can just grab a camera and run right now to my desk so you can see my desk 2.0 because it's way more organized right now. The tab situation, I'll give you that. You know what? I got a lot of irons in the fire.
You don't have to defend any of this. You are organized. You know exactly how this works.
Mm-hmm.
One man's shambles is another man's perfect organization.
You don't think it's weird that they left a bunch of batteries in there and their scale model, clay model designs? That's like...
Not at all. I don't think that's weird at all. The batteries make sense because they're just like, what do you want to do? It's like, hey, they're going to sue us for whatever anyways, just leave them. You know?
But that is shambles. That's not like moving out of an office like a normal company would move out of an office. So you wouldn't leave a bunch of stuff there.
I think, I don't know. I think we've moved into offices after people just left immediately. And I don't know, it was people's stuff is just there, because when you go to one meeting and they're like, hey, virtual town hall, everyone come and we're going to have virtual bagels. And then during that virtual town hall, they're like, hey, FYI, the company's out of money. Grab what you can and get out. I mean, that happens all the time.
That is a testament to a company that is in, dare I say it, shambles.
No, the company's in shambles, but not the building.
That's not a normal exit.
Yeah, no, the building's not in shambles. The building is not in shambles. The company, yes.
They left 2,000-pound models of clay just sitting there.
Yeah.
That's shambles. That's ridiculous.
I would ask can we pull it up in here? Are we looking at it? Are the viewers looking at it?
You don't make your kids put their Play-Doh away before they can?
Oh my God, they have to put that away.
All right.
I don't want to leave my kitchen table in shambles.
In shambles, exactly.
That's an entirely different thing. I mean, yes, granted, all the parents of these employees likely didn't teach their children any structure. But I mean, Jeff, you said it before, making cars is hard.
It is, and I think this is the second time I've pulled this cliche out, so maybe I have a new catchphrase here. But, Henry Fisker is the ultimate example of initiative versus execution as well. Because he, by all accounts, very innovative, really incredibly talented designer, but he could just never get Fisker made. He could just never get these vehicles produced in a way that made them profitable, appealing, whatever you want to say. And it is unfortunate, but I think it's also, when you look at how they left this place, it's a reflection, as Anna has been alluding to, on how the company was run.
Yeah.
Where basically it was, we'll figure that out later. We'll figure that out later. Okay, it's later. Now what? We're out of here.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it was a reflection again of how the company was run. And it made me think a little bit, to use a sports analogy, like you can tell just as much about somebody when they lose as how they react to losing as they do when they win. And in here, you had some people who were on the losing side of this whole situation with this startup. And basically they're just like, screw it, I'm out of here.
Yeah. I would like to say that when it comes to being an office worker, you need to approach your workspace with a more heat-like mentality.
Heat?
Don't let yourself get attached to anything you're not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Okay. Just because, we've heard that from former colleagues and other people in the industry where they're just like, could I please come in and get my photos of my family? And they're just like, sorry, locked. We kind of didn't pay the bills. Can't get anything. Mm-hmm. So just if you have any close personal attachments to anything at that desk,
but here's the other thing, though, just pragmatically looking at this, there was enough stuff in there. They could have sold a lot of that, couldn't they?
Right. That's what I don't get. Like, those are assets, right?
They're assets, but they're so bad that no one's looking at that ping pong table thinking like, hey, get that on Marketplace. We're really going to turn this ship around.
That's fair.
And the same with those clay models. Once it's just indicative that they knew there was no salvaging the company. And I also think that it's a good reminder that a lot of startups, there are two key pieces. There's the idea guy and there's the business guy. And sometimes when the idea guy is also the business guy, maybe it doesn't go so well. Mm-hmm. And vice versa. You kind of need that yin and yang. And and you know what's crazy? Fisker's going to get another shot. It's going to happen, Apple car. No.
No. Please no.
Man, we should play that clip. Don't let yourself get attached. Anyway. All right. Before we jump into, in case you missed it, the story is maybe not as popular on our websites, Industrial Equipment News or Manufacturing.net. We have another word from our sponsor, Oracle NetSuite. This week's episode is sponsored by Oracle NetSuite. Knowledge is power, especially when navigating AI. Demystifying AI, a layperson's guide to artificial intelligence and its impact on our world, is a new business guide written by acclaimed author Glenn Hopper. The guide provides a comprehensive introduction to AI, shedding light on the core concepts and technologies that fuel it. Download it now. The link is in the description and in the live chat. Check it out. That one is worth your time. All right, in case you missed it, story's not as popular, maybe a big impact. Jeff, what do you have for us this week for in case you missed it?
Yeah, so I grabbed an article and the headline really caught my attention. This is off foodmanufacturing.com. It says, we may only have 60 harvests left, according to researchers. So it's obviously talking about agriculture and everything else.
In the end of days.
Yeah, a couple of folks from the UK, Joyce De Silva and Carol McKenna, put together a very lengthy report. And there's a lot in this article. I'll just kind of hit the high points. Basically, what they see is with the influx or the growth of protein-based diets and the amount of meat that we're eating now, we're wrecking stuff, okay? And no other way to put it, because we're eating more meat, we're raising more animals, we need to feed these animals. Or to feed these animals, we're planting more grains and things like that for animal feed. They're also very critical of pet food and the role that has. So their solution here is to go towards more of a vegan type of diet, which we can produce without it being so tough on the soil and the dirt in terms of use of insecticides and pesticides and all of that kind of stuff. They're saying we're ruining our soil, and at some point, we're just not going to be able to grow stuff because, and they trace a lot of it back to, again, the fact that we're eating so much more meat and raising more meat. To me, I think a lot of their approaches, perspectives on these things are a bit extreme. Okay. I think they're making some big jumps here, but there is also there's a lot of knowledge in what they're saying on how we can do things better. Now, I don't think one of the examples they laid out here was a smaller farm where basically this individual is able to organically feed all of his livestock. It's much smaller, it's much more scaled down, and everything is much more sustainable as a result. That's great in practice. But also I would probably say the steaks that come out of those cattle are probably 3 times more expensive than something we would go to the store and buy. Okay. So there's that part of it too, that we need to figure out a balance in terms of being more sustainable, but also not just thinking we can all of a sudden get away from the fact that we have more corporate farms than personal family agricultural businesses. That's sort of just a dynamic of the economy right now. I'm not saying I love it. Yeah. I'm just saying it's kind of a reality, because whenever we have a spike in food prices, people feel that and they're concerned about it. They also bring up a really valid point about how expensive it is to eat healthy, which is definitely something we can work on and get better at. Reading this, it reinforced the fact that, and anybody who's listened to this, and you guys have heard me bring up way too many stories maybe about it, is the technology that we can apply to agriculture. A lot of this Industry 4.0 stuff that we use in terms of gathering data from the production floor to make everything from cars to helicopters to can openers, we can apply that to growing and producing food as well. And I think that can be a bigger part of this solution. Now, do we need to eat better? Yeah, we do. And there probably is an overproduction or an over-reliance on meat. I would say especially cheaper cuts of meat in the way that we over-process things like that. But what was an interesting dynamic is the authors of these reports are saying we need more government regulation that basically says, this is how it's going to be. This is how we're going to produce things. This is what you're going to buy. Whereas everybody else is kind of saying you can't tell consumers how to live their lives essentially and what to eat. Yeah. So it's an interesting divide there, an interesting debate, if you will, in terms of what is the right approach to go. I feel, again, like in most cases, it's kind of down the middle. It is implementing more sustainable farming practices. It is using more data-driven agricultural policies, but we need to also help farmers embed those approaches, not just say, here it is, figure it out.
Well, I think part of it is sustainable farming is still niche compared to industrial food manufacturing, right? And so if there was this forced change to more sustainable farming, I think that's where the disconnect is, right? Like sustainable farmed meat is so much more expensive because it doesn't fit that model, you know, it's an outlier. Whereas if that becomes the norm, then those prices come down. Have you watched the documentary Kiss the Ground? I highly recommend it because it's basically how farms can change the way they raise cattle or kind of any livestock to be a little bit more kind to the soil, make it so we don't have 60 more harvests. Highly recommend it because it would be a great companion piece to this.
But the other thing that wasn't addressed here is our distribution networks for these food products are better than they've ever been. So there's a lot of efficiencies that are also realized with this mass production and with the supply chains that we have in place, which work against a lot of these more sustainable practices. So it's finding some sort of balance there. I don't think we can just go one way. Yeah. There has to be a way that we can figure out a way to work together with all of these things in mind. And I just think it obviously takes more buy-in, but it also takes more education on the consumer level to say, I'm not forcing organically, beef-fed hamburgers down your throat. What I'm telling you is we're going to charge you a little bit more for all of these reasons, okay? Yeah. That's what's going on. I think there needs to be more education, and there does need to be government involvement, but more from a funding perspective in terms of encouraging these more data-driven, IoT-based type of technologies and making them available to farmers.
Well, Anna, that's kind of my thought is that talking about the distribution network is that it is very square peg, round hole, right? Where this is the solution, this is our current environment, and the two just don't jive. So we need to figure out what that transition is going to look like.
Yeah, and I think, Jeff raised a great point, which is around how you level that playing field, because there's no way anything changes until you can figure out a way to make it competitive to do it the right way. I mean, that's in every industry, right? Yeah. But especially when it comes to food. And so it is going to involve more than just, everybody wanting to do this for the sake of our earth. It's going to take, again, investment. It's going to take technology. It's going to take a lot of things, more of a cohesive approach. And, somebody would have to take the reins on that. And then you think about all the special interests that are involved in the food industry and how contentious this could and would be.
Yeah.
So it is a big challenge when you think about it that way.
No, it's definitely something that doesn't get done without a hand on the scale, or like we kind of mentioned with the EV story earlier, just facing dire odds, which arguably we already are. For my, in case you missed it this week, I chose another food story, actually, Jeff. America's largest French fry producer is closing a facility amid fading demand. Lamb Weston is the country's largest manufacturer of French fries, something very dear to my heart. The company is now closing a plant in Connell, Washington, due to waning consumer demand for fast food. Lamb Weston says the closure will result in nearly 400 layoffs, cutting about 4% of its overall workforce. The company said it faces no other choice but to reduce production after rising inflation led consumers to cut fast food expenses. Inflation is also causing consumers to downsize their fry orders. Instead of the large, you're getting the small. The company's latest quarterly results saw net sales come in at $11.2 million, below the same quarter last year. That's $11.2 million below the same quarter last year. And shares of the company's stock have fallen 35%. Nearly 80% of French fries consumed across the U.S. are from fast food chains. Fast food chain traffic dropped 2% last quarter and 3% the previous. McDonald's, which actually accounts for 13% of Lamb Weston's sales just by itself, saw U.S. restaurant sales fall 0.7% in the last quarter. Lamb Weston also slashed its 2025 forecast by $100 million, from the previous $850 million down to $750 million. Now, I chose the story because we need to save American jobs and eat more fries. But I also chose this story because, changing consumer demand is a reality. And I feel like this is a shift that we saw a long time coming. And sometimes, Jeff, I know you raise this point a lot. Sometimes you need to diversify, or you need to do something to help shift with the market or make it a little bit more competitive. And I think Lamb Weston maybe just rested on its laurels, thought, hey, we're always going to eat fries. And as a result, 400 people are out of a job.
No, it's an interesting. I was really caught by this. This one caught my eye too, and I was really surprised, I guess.
Yeah.
But then I thought about my own personal habits, and I don't eat a ton of fast food, but I'm actually more prone to order like 2 sandwiches than the value meal with the sandwich and the fries. So I don't know if that's, and a lot of that is based.
I'm more prone to just get 2 fries. No.
Well, and I don't know, and a lot of that is because like they'll be running a special. You're going through the drive-through, and it's easier to say 2 fish sandwiches or whatever the case is. So I don't know if that's playing a part of it, but it was surprising, but not so much when you think about the bigger picture in terms of people trying to be healthier and eat better. But man, when you do get those fries, they're pretty amazing. Yeah. And maybe they do need to, we were talking about this before we started recording, get an air fryer, because those air fryers with the fries at home that's life-changing right there.
That is what is going to prop up this market. They need to really lean in.
Air fryer
fries.
There you go.
And it was just very coincidental because this story came out yesterday or 2 days ago. And yesterday we're talking to some friends at the house, and they were upset because they were talking about, man, my kids have had McDonald's like 5 times this week. It was just the nature of always running around, as you wind up doing sometimes. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey, you are saving American jobs right now. You should double. You should get 10 Happy Meals this week. It's what we got to do.
Keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought the timing of this was a little bit interesting. And so I kind of am wondering if there's more to it than this inflation blame game. The latest report says inflation it now hit its lowest level in the last 3 years. I think it looks by many accounts and even the Federal Reserve that it's coming down and has come down a lot. McDonald's, for their part, they were really put on blast in their last shareholders call, and they admitted kind of we raise our prices too high. We're losing value consumers. So they have proactively gone the other way. They have all these specials they're running right now, trying to get people in the door with lower cost items on their menu. as in an effort to get people back. But the narrative there was very price driven, that they were losing customers because they raised prices too much. So if they're trying to scale back on that and inflation is getting better, why right now are you closing this facility if not for maybe some other reasons that are coupled with, I'm not saying that's not a problem for them. I'm sure it has been, but you can't, hold on this long and then right as the problem's being fixed, then that's when I don't know. It just seems like there might be more to the story there. That's just my guess.
I think that makes sense. But I think it also makes sense that this is still part of that fallout. And one of the things that they argue is a lot of those more discounted items that McDonald's has, those are cheaper, but you're getting a small fry. And so instead of people buying value meals with a medium or large fry, everyone's getting a small fry or even the kid-sized fry with a Happy Meal. And that's causing this, sort of gap in the market, which I mean, it was an example, but
maybe McDonald's is putting fewer fries in their order.
They are. Let's get onto that topic. No, I'm not that.
Struck a nerve.
Sounds like you have something to say.
David's going to get on his soapbox about these fry quantities.
If I could just not have to go back to a fast food restaurant for poor quality food or a wrong order or any number of things, I would just, A, I'd go back more often, and B, it would just be a better place because you guys wouldn't have to hear about it the next day.
Maybe when you told that story about seeing a mouse in that McDonald's, that was like maybe a year or two ago.
That's the only one that's not closed. Like so many other ones have changed into something else. And the one with the mouse, still fine.
It just seems like maybe those 400 jobs are on you.
I do not think so. They're on that mouse.
Good luck getting to sleep tonight, David.
Yeah,
I'll sleep just fine after I eat 3 large fries. And then I'll get woken up by my heartbeat. What's that noise? My God, it's my chest. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
So I picked a story, and I'm just going to keep this short and sweet because there's not a lot to it, but it's a story about the oldest operating Toyota forklift that was found in Burlington, Ontario. So there's a company called Intelli Parts. They're a supplier of aftermarket forklift and aerial lift parts. They, as sort of like a marketing campaign, went on the search for the oldest Toyota forklift in operation. The winner was Alexander Toolsy from Burlington, Ontario, who still uses his 1978 Toyota model 423F GC20.
Nailed it.
That's the name, I guess. Which was designed for heavy-duty material handling. It has a gas-powered engine. The model is known for its solid construction, this is according to the press. Efficient operation and ease of maintenance. Toolsy won a $100 Intelli gift certificate as well as a $100 Visa gift card. Fun story. I love these oldest operating whatever in the market stories. I think they're so fun. I think other people like them too. They're just sort of to see what people are still using and what has stood the test of time and how it's being utilized. Very cool. I think as a manufacturer, it's amazing marketing and really at what cost to Intelli? They, hunting down this information, giving out these little gift cards and then putting out this press release that has some appeal, I think, as people are like, well, that's cool. I'll click on this and look at the picture. And so anyway, for those of you out there listening, think about the products that you produce. And if there's any way to kind of replicate this campaign, I don't know, maybe try it. Like it might be fun. I would love to see the oldest, torque wrench that's being used in a manufacturing facility or, whatever it is. Just sort of an interesting story. I know there's not, again, it's not like there's contentious. There's nothing to argue about.
No,
sorry guys.
No, I think these are really cool stories. Jeff, and my point about these stories is that it doesn't take a lot. This was a 4 or 5 sentence email that they sent to me with a few photos, and they're just like, hey, look at this. And I was like, yeah, look at that. That's cool. I think that, and part of this was part of my final thought, but I think people sometimes think these stories are going to be too labor intensive, when it comes to marketing or when it comes to getting a little bit of a message about yourself out there. And really, when you got something cool like this, it doesn't take much. Just be like, hey, look at us. We did this. Cool. Write it up.
Yeah, agreed. People love sharing these stories too. So it's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to our final thoughts this week before we get out of here. Anna, do you have a final thought for us this week?
Not really. I'm going to be gone next week, so I will be missing the podcast. And I would like to approve who will be standing in for me. So if we could do some sort of interview process in advance to that, I don't know if you want to set that up.
So, like, if I already asked Ben and like already sent him a calendar invite,
yeah, approved.
Would you? Okay, it's
Yep.
approved. Good,
Ben approved.
And stamp of approval.
You will see Ben here next week.
Had I known that the process changed, first person I would have let know. Just like, hey, I'm looking to bring in a sub. Mm-hmm. Here's who we got.
Yeah, it's an intensive review process, but Ben has been approved. So.
Yeah, I like the deepening bench that we have. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned a little bit about my final thought this week, but just to let everybody know, I was on the Manufacturing E-Commerce Success podcast this week with Kurt Anderson and Damon Pistolka. Highly recommend that you go and check it out. The Manufacturing E-Commerce Success. I actually brought up the oldest forklift story as part of that. And when it comes to doing a better job of telling your company's story. We talk we talk about a lot of things. We talk about the podcast, the birth of the podcast and what it's become, as well as what we do at Industrial Equipment News and Manufacturing.net that's successful. We also get into some of the new marketing campaigns that have been successful for some of our clients using AI to as Jeff likes to say, instead of take a shotgun approach, take more of a high-powered rifle approach to marketing. So if you get a chance, check out Manufacturing E-Commerce Success and let me know what you think, unless you didn't like it, because then that'll like destroy me and I won't be able to get over it. So nice things only. Jeff, final thought this week?
So last weekend, as we kind of alluded to, I was fishing. We're going for muskies, which is an amazing fish to catch, but not really a fish that you would eat. Yeah. Some people do try to eat it. And this sort of led to a conversation in the boat about some of the weird stuff you can see in bars up north that people try to pass along and feed. So, like, have you guys ever had pickled hard-boiled eggs?
I can't do it.
No? Have you ever tried those?
I can't. No, I can't. Like
Producer Eric says give him a thumbs up.
I know. I feel like it's a clear divide. It's a yes or no. It's not a maybe.
What about herring? Yeah.
You ever pickle egg?
No.
No?
Mm-mm. What about herring? Have you ever had herring?
I have had herring. I've had a lot of pickled fish. I've had pickled muskie because that's how my brother, when he catches a muskie, that's what he does. Yeah. And it, you don't have to worry about the bones as much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this led into also a story that was published while I was gone. How are you feeling about the chicken Big Mac?
Try it.
No, nothing strong there. Usually you come up pretty strong on these stories, David.
So I will rave about McDonald's fries, but their chicken sandwiches outside of the McChicken are all hot trash. So, so I saw the chicken Big Mac and I'm like, hey, one more thing to avoid on the menu.
All right.
I don't know. What were your thoughts?
I'm going to give it a shot. If I see it, I would definitely try that. I would think I would be more prone to order that than the regular Big Mac, but we'll see.
Get some fries while you're there in support of American jobs.
I have to now.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but my favorite is just simple cheeseburger. It's the same every time. Perfect, perfectly done. But yeah, I saw that and I was just like,
it's perfect every time at McDonald's. I find that hard to believe.
Time. Yeah, because they don't have to overthink it. It is like 4 ingredients. The only thing that they mess up is I order it without pickles. And sometimes you can see where they were just taken off. And you're just like, come on. Or you don't check and you bite into the pickle and you're like, one thing. I asked for one thing. But, let's, if Anna's out next week, let's do chicken Big Macs.
Yeah, we'll get some chicken Big Macs.
Taste test.
I won't be here to judge you. I'll just be somewhere else. Ben won't judge you.
Man, you wouldn't even try the bacon flavored chips. It was just bacon dust.
Those were amazing.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm just saying.
I'm really not terrible to be around. I know I sound.
No.
I don't think anyway. I don't know. Maybe.
If that is at all what I'm putting out here, I apologize. It is definitely
Anna, she won't even try the bacon flavored chips.
right.
That's the bar of how we accept people.
Go hang out at the library.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't invite you to my chip party this weekend, but we were having bacon flavored chips, so no dice. No, not at all, Anna. All right.
It's
well,
fine. It's fine.
It's fine. Okay. Feel like it's not fine, Jeff.
She said it was fine. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
Don't push it, David.
I'm not. Before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IN Magazine so you can join Doug, Jesse, Seth, everyone that joins us in the live chat every week. All right, for Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.